Guys, welcome to Creatively Homemade. My name is Jennifer and I love to share fun and simple paper crafting projects. Now today I have for you a Christmas card idea. It's hard to believe it's already the middle of October, so if you're going to be making handmade Christmas cards, it's the perfect time to start. Now I like to send out Christmas cards that reflect the true meaning of the season, so I was so excited to see the Night in Bethlehem stamp set from Stampin Up. So this is the card I'm going to be demonstrating today. Super pretty. I love the little glittery accents on it. I am using the Night in Bethlehem stamp set and the coordinating die set to make this simple card. So let's get started and I'll show you how easy it is to make this. Okay, so first let's go over what supplies you need to make this card. As I said before, I'm using the Night in Bethlehem stamp set and the coordinating die set. You are going to need some ink. You need crumb cake and early espresso. In addition, you're going to need some dies or circle punches. I am using the Stitch Shapes die set and the layering circles. Now if you have circle punches that are 2 inches, maybe 2.5 inches, you could use those as well. And then last but not least, you're going to need some paper. You're going to need Very Vanilla for the card base. You're going to need some crumb cake. You're going to need some gold glimmer paper, just a little scrap of it, and then you're going to need a scrap of early espresso cardstock. The first thing you need to do is cut your paper. This is a piece of Very Vanilla cardstock, and it is an 8.5 inch by 5.5 inch piece of cardstock, so it's just a standard piece of cardstock cut in half. And I'm going to put that in my scoreboard here and score it at 4.25 inches. Just to make a neat edge on my folded card. And then you can set that aside. And then you need a piece of crumb cake cardstock that is 4 inches by 5.25 inches. And then you're going to need a tiny little piece of gold glimmer paper that is 5.25 inches by about, I think it was 3/8, a little less than 1/2 inch. You can kind of just eyeball it. You want it to be wide enough that you can run adhesive, a tape runner on the back to adhere it to your card. And then you're also going to need some scraps. You're going to need a scrap of gold glimmer paper to cut out the little star. You're going to need a scrap of early espresso cardstock to cut out the scalloped circle. And you're going to need a scrap of Very Vanilla cardstock to do some stamping. So the first thing you want to do is to do your stamping. I'm going to be using 5 of the stamps from this Night in Bethlehem stamp set. You're going to be using the little stars. You're going to be using the Mary and Joseph stamp, the Blessed Christmas Wishes stamp, this sentiment stamp, and also the Bethlehem landscape stamp. So I already have those mounted on blocks. So pull out your card base, open it to the inside, and we're going to stamp the sentiment on the inside. That's going to be the Blessed Christmas Wishes. I'm using early espresso for that. I'm just going to ink that up. You don't really have to press hard into these stamps to get ink on them. In fact, it's better if you kind of lightly tap it. Just turn it over and make sure that it has even coverage all over the raised image. And then you want to stamp that right in the middle of that inside layer. Just like that. Set that aside to dry. The Very Vanilla and Whisper White cardstock are really awesome for getting crisp, clear images, but they do take a moment to dry because if you rub your hand across it immediately after stamping, it will smudge. So just set it aside for a minute or so while you do the rest of your stamping. And then pull out that scrap of Very Vanilla and ink up your little Mary and Joseph stamp. Now these stamps this is a solid stamp, so you want to definitely make sure that you tap all over this and make sure that it gets even coverage, because what it looks like there, if there are any spots that are kind of blotchy, that's going to show up on your stamped image. So go ahead and Tap your stamp pad into that stamp several times to ensure even coverage, and then stamp it onto the very vanilla cardstock. Okay, set that one aside to dry as well. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is stamp on the crumb cake layer. Now, to line up that Bethlehem City stamp, we're going to draw a line on the paper. So measure 1 3/4 inches from the bottom and just make a mark on both ends. Just like that. And then use your ruler to line it up and draw a line. And that's just going to be really helpful to help you line up that stamp and make sure that it's straight. Now, you don't have to worry about erasing that line later. This gold strip is going to cover it, but it's just really helpful to line things up. So pull out that sentiment stamp. It says, "Wishing you a season of joy as we remember the night when love came down to earth and became our song of celebration." I think that's a really cool sentiment. So we're going to stamp that in the bottom right corner. Again, use early espresso. Just tapping that lightly onto the ink pad and making sure that it's evenly covered. And then stamp that in the bottom right corner. Just like that. The next thing you want to do is pull out that Bethlehem stamp, and we're going to stamp it in early espresso as well. Like the Mary and Joseph stamp, this one is solid. There aren't a lot of details to it, so you want to make sure that it is evenly covered. Like you can see there, it's kind of blotchy, so make sure you go back over that and ensure that it is evenly inked. Just like that. And then line that stamp up with the bottom. Let's stand up here just so I can make sure to line this up perfectly. You want to line the bottom of the stamp up with that line. Okay, and you can see there's a little bit here that's not stamped, so you can go ahead and ink this end up again. It's mostly going to be behind the die cut with the Mary and Joseph stamp, so it doesn't matter too much, but I just like to add a little more stamping there, just like that. Okay, the last little bit of stamping we're going to do is to add some stars up at the top here, and I'm going to use crumb cake. I don't want it to be super dark, so I'm using the same color ink as the cardstock layer. And just ink that up and stamp it across the top. You can kind of rotate it so it's not the same all the way across if you want. Just like that, to add some little stars. Now that's all the stamping you have to do. So go ahead and pull out your die cut machine, and we'll do a few die cut pieces before we put it all together. So I pulled my die cut machine out, and we just have 3 die cuts to cut. You need the star shape from the Bethlehem Edgelets die set, and I've got that scrap of gold glimmer paper. So just put that die on there and put your top plate on and run that through. Now the gold glimmer paper is a little bit thicker, so I run it back and forth a couple times to ensure that it cuts really well. Then you can just pop that right out. And then for the other ones, I need circles. So we need to cut out Mary and Joseph using the Stitched Shapes circle die. That die is about 2.5 inches. It's a little bit smaller than 2.5 inches. You can also use a circle punch. I just like the look of the stitching around the image. See, it has a nice border around it that looks really cool. And then the last thing is a scrap of early espresso cardstock and a scalloped circle die. And that is part of the layering circles die set, which is really nice to have. I find myself using those all the time. And there's that, whoops, that die cut. So I'm going to put my die cut machine away and I will be right back. So now we have all our pieces cut and we are ready to put our card together. I am using a snail adhesive tape runner and I'm going to use Stampin' Dimensionals foam adhesive. So I just have a piece of scrap paper here. You want to start by adhering this crumb cake layer to the front of your card. And you want to make sure there's an even border all the way around your card, or the layer. You just want to make sure the very vanilla showing through is even on all sides. Next, you want to take this gold glimmer strip and add adhesive to the back of that. Whoops, flip that right over. Okay. And then you want to cover that line you drew. So I like to line that up right at the bottom of the stamping so it looks like it edges, maybe it looks like a little street underneath that city scene. Just like that. And then go ahead and take your little Mary and Joseph stamped circle and adhere it to the back of the scalloped early espresso piece. I think I forgot to mention when we were doing the die cuts, but that scalloped circle is approximately 2 5/8 inches. So it's just going to have a tiny little border all the way around. Just like that. Now the little star and the Mary and Joseph stamped image we're going to pop up on Stampin' Dimensionals to give that a little bit of dimension on your card. I'm going to turn those over. I'm going to put one on the back of the star piece and I'm going to put about 3 on the back of the circle. So just remove that backing. Those dimensional pieces have adhesive on both sides, so they're very convenient to use. The worst part is getting the little backings off of them. And so just add your star right there above the cityscape. And then remove the adhesive backing from the circle. If you have a paper piercing tool, that is really helpful to get those backings off. And then add the Mary and Joseph image right over there at the left side of the card. And that's all there is to it. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and it has inspired you to make your own handmade Christmas cards this year. If you would like step-by-step instructions, be sure to head over to creativelyhomemade.com. I have a blog post up that has the complete supply list and the directions for making these. And I will put a link to that down in the description box below so you can click on over. If you are interested in any of the supplies that I used to make this card, including that pretty Night in Bethlehem stamp set, I have the links down in the description box below that go straight to my online Stampin' Up store where you can purchase those. If you would like to see more of my paper crafting tutorials, be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And if you want to be updated each time I post a new video, be sure to click that little bell next to the subscribe button. That'll send you a notice when I've posted something new. Thank you guys so much for watching. Happy crafting!